Should be live in 3, 2, 1. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Councillor Amrit Mann and I'm the chair of the Planning Committee. It's now just a little over 5 p.m. so I would like to welcome all of you to this virtual meeting of the Hounslow's Planning Committee. I would like to welcome the members of the committee who are sitting this evening, as well as council officers who will be assisting members throughout the meeting. In addition, I would like to welcome members of the public who are watching this meeting at home. As you all may know, until recently, virtual meetings for council business were not legal. But as a result of the coronavirus pandemic and the quarantine arrangements required by government, the law has recently been changed to let local authorities meet in a virtual way to make decisions. Therefore, this meeting is taking place using the recently introduced government regulations. The way this meeting will work will be that as chair, I will be running the meeting and inviting people to speak. As it is very easy for people to speak over each other in meetings like this, I will ask each member or officer to speak in turn at the appropriate stage. This will mean that there should normally be no need for people to interrupt or ask to speak. However, I shall make sure that members have ample opportunity to ask questions and make comments on the reports and applications before them. The exception to this arrangement will be the legal, committee or planning officers who may turn on their microphone to alert me to any legal, governance or planning issues that need addressing, although I would expect this to be a rare occurrence. In addition, we have a producer of the meeting from our ICT department who may also contact me if necessary, but I think is unlikely if all goes well, as we all hope it will. The etiquette for members of the committee and for officers who are expecting to speak will be to mute your microphones until you're asked to speak. This means that only one person will be speaking at a time and there will be no background noise, making it easier for us all to follow the meeting and also for those watching at home. I will also ask members to say who they are when they make a contribution and to speak slowly and clearly for the same reason. We have 6 members of the planning committee with us here this evening, and it is we who will be making the decisions. Officers of the council will provide assistance and advice as required, but the final decisions will be made by the members. So, I would now like to introduce each of the members here tonight one by one. I will start. My name is Councillor Amrit Mann and I'm the chair of this committee. I'm also the ward councillor for Heston East Ward. Can I now invite my vice chair, Councillor Richard Foote, to introduce himself?
Hi, I'm Councillor Richard Foote. I represent Hamworth Ward and I'm vice chairman of the planning committee.
Thank you, Richard. Can I now ask Councillor Samia Chowdhury to introduce herself?
Thank you, Chair. I am Councillor Samia Chowdhury. I'm ward councillor for Hamworth, cabinet member for leisure services.
Thank you, Samia. Can I now ask Councillor Preetham Garwal to introduce himself?
Hi, Chair. Thank you. I'm Councillor Preetham Garwal from Hounslow Central Ward and member of the Planning Committee.
Thank you, Preetham. Can I now ask Councillor Guy Lambert to introduce himself?
Thank you, Chair. My name is Guy Lambert. I'm a member of the Planning Committee and a member for Brentford Ward.
Thank you, Guy. Can I now ask Councillor to introduce himself, please?
Hi, my name is John Todd. I'm a councillor for Chiswick Homefield Ward and a member of the Planning Committee.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. I'd now like to introduce my officers. First and foremost is Peter Matthews from Planning.
Hello everyone, my name is Peter Matthew. I am the Executive Director for Housing, Communities and Planning at the London Borough of Hounslow.
Thank you, Peter. Can I ask Shane Baker to introduce himself?
Good evening, I'm Shane Baker. I'm Head of Strategic Development and Delivery for Hounslow Council.
Thank you, Shane. Can I ask Sam Smith to introduce himself?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. My name is Sam Smith. I'm the Deputy Area Planning Manager for the west of the borough, and I will be presenting one of the cases this evening.
Thank you, Sam. Can I now ask Kieran Coughlin to introduce himself?
Thank you, Chair. My name is Kieran Coughlin and I'm a Transport Officer with the Council.
Thank you, Kieran. Now, let me introduce members of the Legal and Governance, starting with Jimmy Walsh.
Evening, everybody. I'm Jimmy Walsh from HB Public Law, and I'm here to provide legal advice to members and officers at this evening's committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy. Can I ask Wendy Merry to introduce herself?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. I'm Wendy Merry and I'm from Democratic Services.
Thank you, Wendy. Now, can I ask Chaspal Sandhu to introduce herself?
Good evening, I'm Chaspal Sandhu and I'm here from Democratic Services.
Thank you, Chaspal. Right, so we also have officers acting a producing role for the technical side of this meeting, but as they're not expected to speak not expected to be involved in the discussions of this meeting, I will thank them for their help, but not ask them to introduce themselves. Right. There are some good housekeeping rules. Members of the public are reminded that the agenda and all reports being considered by the committee tonight can be found on the council's website under the planning committee meetings page. So if you want to see them, that's where you will find them. I also want to make sure that all members have seen the agenda and the reports, and if you've not had any sight of them, please speak now. Otherwise, I would assume that it is correct that everybody has seen them. Okay. So I assume that everybody's seen them. I would like to remind members of the need to hear all the evidence in each report we are considering tonight. This means that you should listen to the whole debate. Please do not pop out for a cup of tea or walk the dog. This is a legal requirement, and I will be asking you to confirm you have heard the whole debate before you vote on any matter this evening. If you should find you are having technical problems and need to log out of the meeting and come back in, please let me know immediately, ideally beforehand, but if not afterwards, by turning on your microphone. This would be a permitted interruption. We can then decide how far we need to recap, if that is necessary, or if the member needs not to vote on that item. Finally, I would say to any members of the public listening or watching, thank you for joining us this evening. We hope that this meeting will go well, but any virtual meetings may suffer from an unexpected technical hitch, so please bear with us in that event. I should also clarify that this meeting is being recorded and it will be made available on the Council's YouTube channel in the next few days. Contributors to the meeting are asked to remember that they will therefore be included in the recording of this public meeting. Thank you, and now we will move on to the first agenda item. That is apologies for absence. We would usually have a large number of members sitting on this planning committee, but for virtual meetings, we have concluded it is much better to have a smaller number of members. So apart from me and Councillor Foot as the Vice Chair, other members of the planning committee will be attending virtual meetings on a rota basis in accordance with political proportionality. This does not mean that those members who are not here this evening are absent or need to send apologies, and they will not be marked down on the attendance list maintained by the council. So looking from the people in the meeting, we are quorate, everybody is present, we have a full house. Now we go on to item number 2, which is declaration of interest under the Town Planning Code of Guidance or any other communication from members. Does any member now need to make a declaration or give any other communication? Please speak now if you wish to do so. If there is more than one person, I will give the order in which you can speak. Right, so members, declaration of interests. Guy Lambert.
Yeah, I received a call from the consultant dealing with the second item on the agenda tonight yesterday.
Item 4. Councillor Garba?
Same here, Chair. I received a call from that, developer.
Okay.
On the second, on item 4, please. Yeah.
Okay, I would assume that that's probably right throughout the committee members. Yeah, so I would assume that that's generally accepted for all committee members. I've had representations from people on item 4, but that's it. So that, I think, concludes the declaration of interests, unless anybody got anything further to add.
Sorry, Chair,
Yes.
Jimmy Walter. Just to clarify, when council say they received a call, I assume it's a call that no discussions went forward in relation to the actual application. It was more of an attempt at lobbying or whatever. I don't know what. I just wouldn't mind a bit more detail in relation to the call coming from a developer.
Okay. Guy, it was just a call, I would assume.
It was just a call from the consultant acting, I believe, for the developer. I made a couple of comments on what I'd seen so far, but obviously I will be listening with care to what is said by both sides in the meeting, and that will determine my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Guy. So, Jimmy, I think for the purposes of record keeping, that is probably a similar scenario that is with all the committee members present tonight. Yeah,
I'm happy with that. I just want to make it clear. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and it should be recorded as such, right?
Thank you, Chair.
Can I just say, Chair, I'm offended because I wasn't called by anybody.
Oh dear. Okay, Councillor Foot, right? Okay, let's move on, right? Planning decisions, right, that are up in front of us. We now move on to the planning applications for decision this evening. There are 2 planning applications, item 3 and 4. We need to have time contributions. I will ask the legal officer to alert me to when allocated timings have been reached. I will ask her or him to, him in this case, Jimmy, to alert me to prior to the guillotine being reached if we have not concluded the meeting by that time. May I remind members, officers and public speakers at this meeting to introduce themselves each time as they speak, and also to turn off their microphones when they have finished speaking. It is also important to speak slowly and clearly so that everyone can understand what they're saying. Finally, if you're making a reference to any agenda documentation, please give the page and paragraph details. I think that should be abundantly clear. Now, we've decided to take, or I've decided to take item 4 first, and we have speakers on this item. There are 3 speakers. There is the ward councillor, Councillor Kuldeep Tak. He will be going first, then the objector Robert Mould, and then the applicant David Maxwell. So just for clarity, we are discussing the planning application in front of us. I want members and the speakers to just refer to that particular planning application that is in front of us. Nothing other than that will be allowed, and I'm sure our legal beagle, Jimmy Walsh, will step in and put us back on track. So with that in mind, the process for speakers is as follows. The process for the application with speakers is as follows. I will invite the objector, not the objector, but it will be Councillor Tack, to speak for 5 minutes in total. The members will then have a chance to question Councillor Tack. I will then ask the objector, Robert Mole, to speak for 5 minutes. Then the members will be asked to ask questions of the objector. Then lastly, I will ask the applicant to speak, and then we will question the applicant on their application. This means that the process that the committee will have will be able to get all information that they need to make a decision in a fair way to all parties. We will therefore start the process for this application. May I remind all and both applicants and objectors and Councillor Tack that they have 5 minutes. I will ask the legal officer to time each of the contribution and to advise people when they have 30 seconds left, and this will help you draw your presentation to a close. So, Councillor Tack, are you online?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Councillor Tack, when you're ready, let me know, and your 5 minutes will start from that point.
Okay, I'm ready now.
Okay, off you go.
Thank you, Chair. My concerns are regarding the proposed development of erection of 51 self-contained residential units, which is proposed at Eldridge House 104-106 Hounslow Road, Feltham North. The neighbouring residents, most of whom are vulnerable and elderly people, have raised several objections, and all were disregarded or were not given satisfactory answers to. The main concerns are: the proposal is for a 4-story building. This is not in keeping with neighbouring properties and will look out of character and will overlook other properties. Neighbours feel that this will breach their privacy, and the people living in those flats will be able to look over their gardens from their bedroom windows. This is a serious concern, and some of the issues are already being raised by neighbours at a nearby construction at Sparrow Farm. This will increase the traffic on the Hounslow Road, which is already suffering due to the ongoing works at Feltham Bridge, and many times comes to a standstill during peak hours. The applicant has said around 100 cars an hour will access the Hounslow Road. As I mentioned earlier, that many of the neighbouring residents are vulnerable and elderly people, and many of them have breathing issues. This will cause serious harm to their health and well-being. The council has adopted the approach to try and go car-free for all new developments in the borough. Why this development should not follow the same? The council has done consultation for the impact to the neighbours, and many have objected to this development. Regardless of many concerns raised, the application has been put forward with a recommendation for approval. The developer has already assumed that the planning application is approved before it is discussed by the planning committee and a decision is made by the committee. There were workmen sent to the site to start work on 18th of August. When confronted by neighbouring residents, they replied, and I quote, they were laying pipes for the foundation. When the neighbours objected and said it has not been approved yet, the workmen replied it already has been by the planning department. Then a formal complaint was raised by Mr. Robert Mole on behalf of the neighbouring residents. The planning officer then had to send a council officer to speak to 2 men that had a small digger at the site. They said they were preparing ground for ducting for power and water, and that they may clear up the site as well. They were advised not that no planning application has been determined, and they would be required to stop the work that need permission. This, in my opinion, raises serious concerns that the developer is so confident that regardless of any objection, his application will be approved, and that they may even start the work before the application is approved. I hereby request the committee that this application is put on hold before all these issues are resolved and a middle ground is agreed between the neighbouring residents and the developer. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Tack, thank you very much. Let me ask my members if they have any questions for you. Right, so Councillor Richard Foote, any questions to Councillor Tack?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Tack referred to the buildings as being 4-storey buildings. I'm sorry, I've had another quick look at the map, and what it does show is that they're predominantly 3-storey buildings, but Block A has a 4th storey which is set back. Can we just make sure that we're talking about the same thing and that is accurate? Yeah, that's all I've got as a question at the moment, Chair. Okay.
Councillor Tack, were you aware that this is a 3-storey, predominantly 3-storey, using Councillor Foote's words?
Well, the planning report says there is a 4-storey building as well.
Okay, look, let's stick with the report. Now, let me ask Councillor Samia Chaudhry if there's any questions for Councillor Tack. Samia.
Thank you, Chair. No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Samia. Councillor Preetham Garwal, any questions for Councillor Tack?
No, I've got no question, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Guy Lambert.
Yes, I have a couple of questions. The first one is really a follow-up to what Councillor Foote said. This is predominantly a 3-storey development, and having visited visited the surrounding roads today, many of the houses there are 3-storey. Many of them have been extended into the loft space. So I don't really see that this is a great difference to what's already there in terms of overlooking, etc. So that's my first question. I'd like your comments on that. The second one is more sort of directly a question. You mentioned that I think you said the developers are saying there'll be 100 cars an hour. This means that all the sort of licensed parkers in this development will be moving 4 times an hour, which seems ridiculous. So where can you explain where you got that data from?
Councillor Tack.
Well, what I mentioned is written in the planning report that has been put in the meeting agenda.
Okay, I'll check.
I think what it is, when we ask the officers to do a detailed presentation, we'll ask them to clarify these points, anomalies that have risen. Okay, any further comments, Councillor Tack, to Councillor Guy Lambert's questioning?
Sorry, Councillor, can you turn your mic?
You're on mute. Councillor Tack, you're on mute. That's it?
No comments.
Okay, right. Let me move on then in that case to Councillor Todd. Councillor Todd?
Yeah, I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Myself, Councillor Amrit Mann, I have no questions for you, Councillor Tack. Thank you very much. That was Councillor Tack. He was the ward councillor making representations on behalf of his ward. Okay, now, slight error on my part, which I should have, and I apologise to Shane Baker, who should have done a summary of this presentation. Shane, can you do that summary before we move on to the objectors and the applicant?
Yes, certainly, Councillor. Would you like me to share my screen to show the PowerPoint presentation as well?
Yeah, this is just a brief summary introduction. You're going to do a more detailed one later, okay, when we come. So this is just like a quick trot through of what the flavour of this application is about.
Sure. Okay, so item 4 relates to Eldridge House, which is at 104, 106 Hounslow Road. It's a residential scheme which would develop a vacant plot of land. It's a backland plot which is surrounded by housing. There are 2 buildings. One is 3-storey, that's the smaller building. There is another building which has been referred to as Block A. It is part 2, part 3 and part 4-storey. The 4th floor, the upper floor, is recessed from the main block. There's 25 car parking spaces, 5 of which are blue badge spaces. The site itself is accessed via a long existing driveway from Hounslow Road. The communal space is provided for each block to the rear. We have had 14 objections, and I would note there is also an addendum report where we refer to 2 further submissions. There's a range of issues which we'll probably hear, but we'll address those in more detail later on.
Okay, Shane. Right. Thank you for that. Now, we're going to move on to the objector, Robert Mould. Robert, are you online?
Yes, good evening. Hello.
Good evening. Okay, so when you're ready, let me know, and then you have 5 minutes in order for your presentation to be heard. So the time will start when you are ready.
I'm ready now.
Okay, off you go. The clock starts.
Thank you. I'm one of the directors of a community company set up to help local residents, and I am a local resident right next to the Hounslow Road, Eldridge Close here. And a lot of the residents have asked me to speak for them. Last year, the applicant sent out a survey to residents about the proposed site, and the response from all of us was, we don't want this. Okay, but this hasn't been shared anywhere. We can't find any reference to that. The applicant says there are 51 flats proposed and only 25 car spaces. Everyone questions, where are the other people going to park? Because the surrounding roads are already full to capacity. People are not going to be getting on a bike to go to work every day. I'm sure they're not. The other question is, the officer hasn't visited the site, because I phoned him last week, and when I questioned him on how close houses were to Eldridge Close in the drive, he couldn't answer the question correctly. And I said, what's the traffic situation on the Hounslow Road? And he said he's never been on the Hounslow Road, so that confirms he never visited the site. When I mentioned traffic assessment, he referred to the applicant's documents, and I said, what about the traffic assessment done by the council? And he said this hasn't occurred. The Hounslow Road, as you know, is at a standstill most days, and often the traffic backs up a long way down the Staines Road. The applicant does say in the appeal form about 100 cars an hour will access the Hounslow Road. The impact of over 100 cars and deliveries in and out of Eldridge Close onto that road, and the pollution of waiting cars in Eldridge next to our properties, and especially mine as well, has never been addressed. They'll be polluting into our houses and our gardens. Parking could occur again in Eldridge House, and I worked for a long time with Gold Care Homes to get a barrier in place, which is there now, as the Feltham Hero Association, who own a property a few yards away, were parking at all hours, disturbing residents' sleep, including mine, and despite repeated requests, wouldn't desist. That's why the barrier is there. This could easily occur again if that barrier is removed. People could just park there all the time. The officer has done no assessment of harm for noise and nuisance. It has not been conducted, and we are concerned that there won't be just one person living in a flat. There could be 2 or 3. That could be at least 150 extra people on site. The applicants have said in the appeal form they won't do any enforcement, so the potential for serious issues could be catastrophic to us. And there is a large amount of very vulnerable people living close to this site, and that includes myself and my family as well. This development is not in keeping with Neighbours properties. It is not a small building as the applicants state. It will overlook, as there are balconies on the drawings, and this will impede the privacy of neighbouring residents. Now, one further point. A few hundred yards away, we already have a massive ongoing dispute with the council over 102 Hounslow Road. The Hero Association, for 300 noise complaints, have never been addressed by this council. This has resulted in 10 years of misery to us and affected our health and well-being. We spent a great deal of time and money to gain a court order as the council failed to act. That failure caused a serious breach of our rights, which is why we've got lawyers involved now. We do not want the same thing happening with Eldridge House, because it's already happening here. We don't want it again. And that could happen, another 150 people. We're certainly not convinced from what we've seen in 10 years the council will ever act on enforcement, considering what's happened to us. They've never done anything. Would you be convinced that enforcement action would take place if that had happened to you? And finally, as residents, we have a right to peace and enjoyment of our properties, don't we? This is not happening here. I've been informed by several very, very distressed residents, obviously over this situation at the moment, that if this is approved in the future, they may well be taking legal action against Hounslow Council because they are absolutely distraught. Thank you for your time.
Right. Thank you, Robert. Stay on the line. The committee members may have questions for you. Right?
Please do.
Okay. Before we go into the questioning, I want to bring in Jimmy Walsh. Jimmy, there's been references to other properties other than what is in front of us. The committee members, should they disregard those comments?
Indeed, unless there is a direct correlation with this application, you are here as members of the planning committee to decide on this application, and that's what the applicant deserves to be heard on this evening. If there's other issues outside, then that cannot be a reason for refusal and should not be a reason to defer this application this evening, in my legal opinion.
Okay, Jimmy, thank you very much for that legal advice. May I remind members to take on board what the legal advice that has been given, to stick to the application that is actually in front of us. That is what we are going to be deciding tonight. So in terms of the questioning, it should only relate to this planning application, to the objector or to the applicant indeed. Right, so let me go into the questioning to Robert. The first person is my vice chair, Councillor Richard Foote. Richard, any questions to Robert?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm Councillor Richard Foote. I've got a couple of questions. The first one, I didn't quite catch what the meaning was of, or what you were actually saying. I think you said you were a director of a company set up to help local residents. I'm not quite sure how that relates. And my second question asks, would it not be fair to say that the traffic jams that you refer to in Hounslow Road are related to the current situation covering the bridge, and that is likely to finish before this development starts, is it not?
No, it's not just related to the bridge. I've lived there 25 years. It's not just related to the bridge. The bad traffic was bad before the bridge work started anyway. The bridge, it doesn't help. But like yesterday, it was backed way up to Baber Bridge. That's not because of the bridge. I had a walk up there. I looked at it. Not because of that. People want to turn left. They can't turn right there out of Hounslow Road. It's just backed up. It's queued up. There's so much traffic on that road already. That is the main problem with this. Yeah, I'm a director of a community company, DDEM Group Limited, which Mr. Matthews knows all about. And yeah, we set up private non-profit to help lots of residents, you know, especially in this coronavirus situation that's happened. I'm actually a council officer for Eldridge Council as well.
Okay, thank you for that, Robert. Councillor Foote, do you want to come back in, or do you have any further questions?
So, no, I really don't see the relevance of the company that was mentioned, but never mind. And yeah, I'll leave it there.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Foote. Let me move on then to Councillor Samia Chaudhry. Samia, any questions to Robert?
Thank you, Chair. No, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Preetham Garwal, any questions to Robert?
Yes, Chair. Yeah, Robert, you mentioned in your speech the overlooking from the balcony into the properties nearby. Can you tell me how far are the properties or the houses from this development going to be?
Well,
any idea?
What is it, about 20 meters? There are a few trees there that are protected, by the way. But if you go into it, well, I have because I know everybody here. So if you stand up in their bedroom, somebody standing on the balcony would easily look into their gardens. You could easily do it. I actually went into Eldridge House years ago before it was closed down, because my dad used to repair wheelchairs in there, so I knew how close Eldridge House was. But the back of Eldridge House didn't have any balconies, it was the front of it. So, but you could see how close it was. Now, okay, the applicants say they've moved this further away. It will still, you can still see into people's houses easily. Easily. Very near.
Okay, Councillor Peter, any further questions?
No, that's okay, but I'll ask the officers later on. They will tell me exactly how far the property is going to be from this development. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Garwal. Councillor Guy Lambert.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just one question really about, which is on the back on the subject of traffic. I'm not familiar with Hounslow Road in the rush hour because it's not particularly near to where I live. Clearly, the bridge is causing congestion at the moment. I've been there several times recently, and all the congestion when I've been there has been due to the bridge. But in any case, it's a sizable road, and a development with 25 cars maximum. I don't see that is going to have a significant effect on traffic in Hounslow Road. Why do you think it will?
Are you talking to me? Yeah, because, thank you. Well, there's 51 flats, 25 car spaces. Where are the other people going to park? Or are they going to be told, sorry, you can't have a car here? There's 51 flats. There won't be one person in each flat, will there? There'll be at least 2, maybe 3. So where are they going to park? Those are the people if they have cars. Can that be explained to us, please? Because all the side roads are all blocked. Carlton Avenue, where I live in Chichester Way, it's around all of them. They're all packed all the time. So what? So okay, 5 car spaces for disabled people. That's understandable. But that's 20 other spaces as well. But there's 51 flats. So that could be 100 people plus and 100 cars, couldn't it? Can somebody explain that, please? Because this is one of the big things. When the school comes out, the school here. You know, there's other developments being built. It's just chaos. It's bad enough as it is.
Okay,
where there's the park, that's what we need to know.
Councillor Lambert, do you want to come back, or should we ask the officer?
Thank you for that. I don't really accept what you're saying, but I hear it. Thank you.
Okay, we'll ask the officer to shed a bit more in-depth light on the traffic issues. Okay, right, Councillor Todd. Councillor Todd.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Mole, just give me in a couple of sentences, is there any compromise here or what?
Well, flats. I mean, flats are going up everywhere in Feltham. Okay, I know there's a shortage of housing, but it's the effect of it could be at least 100 people coming in and out of there every day. You know, it is.
My question was,
it's close to my house, quite close to my house as well. But that's a lot of people.
Well, we understand that, but what's your compromise?
The compromise. Why isn't there just like, I'll tell you what, there's a development that was done a few years ago, the Hedges over the road, with about 10 houses in it. Why haven't they done that? Put houses in like that. Why do they have to have flats?
I think you should answer your own question. Isn't there there's a dearth of properties, isn't there? There's a dearth of flats. We're getting some affordable flats here too.
They're about 300. The applicants are 300 to 400,000. That's the price of our houses here. I'd be quite surprised. People. Well, I would be quite surprised. But anyway, no. There should be. We don't mind houses. There's a few houses there, but not flats. 50 and over 100 people in them. That's what we object to. When they're outside, there's no assessment of noise and harm. They're going to be outside, aren't they? In the summer, they'll have they can have windows open. You know, it's going to be hell for us. It really is.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Councillor Todd, you finishing on the questioning?
Yes,
okay,
thank you,
right. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Todd. Okay, I have no further questions. So, Robert, thank you for your presentation and questioning. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Right, let me move on now to the applicant, David Maxwell. David, are you online?
Hello, good evening, Chair.
Right, good evening. David, when you're ready, let me know, and then we'll start the clock ticking. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'm ready.
Okay, off you go.
Good afternoon, Chair and Councillors. My name is David Maxwell. I work for GL Hearn as planning agent to the applicant for the site known as Eldridge House. The applicant has worked carefully and diligently with officers from your authority throughout the formal pre-application and application process to provide a high quality design that responds positively to the site. The proposal will bring back into beneficial use previously developed brownfield land for much needed new residential accommodation. The proposal provides 51 new apartments within 2 blocks. Block A will be 3 stories with a recessed partial 4th story. The smaller Block B will be 3 stories. Block B will provide 12 affordable units, representing 24% of the total number of units, which is the maximum amount of affordable that can be provided in this development whilst remaining financially viable. 8 of the 12 affordable units will be London affordable rent and 4 will be shared ownership units. The viability of the scheme has been carefully verified by both your own officers and the Council's independent viability assessor. They are certain that this is the maximum amount available from these proposals. And please also note that there will be a late stage review so that if circumstances change, then additional affordable housing payments will be made. You will note that the car parking on the site has been reduced following input from the Mayor of London's planning team, and there are now 25 spaces. We feel that this strikes a good balance between reducing private cars and recognising the need for car use. As you would expect, residents will not be able to apply for local parking permits. The existing large trees within the northwest corner of the site will be retained, and the proposed landscaping comprises attractive formal hedging around ground floor gardens and landscape gardens and play areas, along with tree planting. The proposal represents sustainable development due to the proposal recycling previously developed land, retaining mature trees as part of the landscaping. In addition, the development will provide photovoltaic solar panels upon the flat roof of the main Block A, along with air source heat pumps. In addition, a financial contribution of £86,445 will be paid via the 106 agreement towards the Council's carbon offset fund. The 106 agreement will also secure contributions towards construction training, car parking zone permits, and ensure considerate construction activities. So overall, the proposed development makes best and most efficient use of a previously developed site, delivering 51 new homes, of which 12 will be affordable. The applicant has worked carefully with officers to ensure that the design is in keeping with and respects the character and amenity of existing surrounding residential properties. Thank you for listening, and I hope that you'll agree with your officer's recommendation of approval for this application. Thank you.
Okay, David, thank you very much. Stay there. Let me see if our committee has some questions for you. Councillor Richard Foote, questions for David.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor Foote. I'm just looking at the map. It's difficult to really get a figure because it doesn't give me northwest south on the maps in the drawings here. But I think one of the objectors talked about distance between windows, which was, did he say 5 metres or did he say something similar? But I'm seeing here the shortest one appears to be 25 metres. Can you comment upon that? Or, you know, am I reading it right? Or
yes,
between window to window?
Thank you. Figure 2 of the officer's report does identify a drawing that was submitted with the application that confirms the distance between the existing housing and the proposed apartments, and that identifies distances between around about 29.6 up to 40 and 45 metres in distance.
Okay. My other question, and again, it may be just I didn't quite catch what you said. You first, earlier on in your presentation, you said that there wouldn't be any, that the residents wouldn't be able to have car parking permits or take part in it. But when you were talking about 106, you were talking about a contribution to car parking zone permits. I'm not quite sure what use that is being put to.
Well, certainly our intention is that there would not be car parking zone permits. The 106 contribution is, as stated in the officer's report.
It's a carbon offset.
The carbon offset contribution, yes.
Not car parking zone permits. I thought that's what you said.
No, he didn't.
No, all right, okay, John. Councillor Todd's corrected me.
Members, decorum.
Can I? Right, no, sorry, I've lost my place now. Never mind. Okay.
Well, if you think of it, I'll come back to you. Let me go through some of the other members.
Okay. Cheers.
Councillor Samia Chaudhry.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one, similar to Councillor Richard Foote, where he said, as you've said, the new residents will not be having the parking permits, but are you aware of the local roads, nearby roads? They don't have, a few of them don't have the parking permit, controlled parking zone. Anybody can park there at present time.
Well, the parking provision that we're proposing is 25 spaces in accordance with the Mayor of London's request. In terms of any off-site parking, that does become an issue that's beyond the control of the applicant, and is one for the authority to possibly take any control over. Okay,
Samia, any further question?
Thank you. I'll come back later. Thanks.
Okay, right. Councillor Preetham Garwal, any questions to David? You're on mute, Preetham.
Sorry, I'm trying to come out of it. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you. I'm Councillor Preetham Garwal. You mentioned in your speech that some trees are going to be saved there, but you didn't tell me how many trees we're losing and how many trees are you going to replace?
Okay, not sure I can give the exact number of trees that are being retained or being removed, but certainly we've had a pre-development tree survey carried out, which categorised the trees in terms of their age and vigour and health, and those that contribute most to the existing landscaping. And having considered that along with your officers, the proposal and the proposed layout retained trees, as I mentioned, most notably in the northeastern corner of the site, along with the additional landscaping and some new tree planting and a play area. So in conclusion, a large number of the trees are being retained, and we certainly feel that adds to and contributes towards the high quality landscape scheme.
Okay. Preetham, any further questions?
Yeah, very quickly. So are you going to replace all the trees you're going to remove? Forget the number of trees. Are you going to be replacing all the trees that are going to be removed?
Well, we are proposing to plant with a high number of new trees, as can be seen on the proposed layout.
Okay, Chair.
Okay, yeah, we'll ask Shane to address that point as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Now, Councillor Guy Lambert.
Thank you, Chair. I've got quite a long list of questions, so if you'll indulge me, I'll ask them sort of one or two at a time.
Okay, that's good. I was going to suggest that you pair them off.
Yeah. So the first one is to do with the heating arrangements. You're proposing to heat it 50% by soon-to-be obsolete gas boilers. Can you explain why that is viable in a time of climate emergency?
Well, this is an issue that we've looked at with the officers in working up the planning application, and it's considered that is an appropriate response, that it would be 50% boilers and 50% heated
heat pumps.
Heat pumps. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
We are also providing the carbon offset contribution as well.
So can I ask? It's a sort of a related question. How is this site going to be managed? Who's going to own the freehold, and how are you going to manage it going forward?
Well, that's still to be determined, but I would expect that this site will be developed out by a house builder, and that there would be a management company with leaseholds for each of the individual properties.
Yeah, I'm concerned because there are in the papers. It says there's problems for access for waste. There's a long narrow road, not enough car parking probably for the people who live there. They'll all park in the road. The bin lorries won't be able to get in, even if you do move the bins. It requires the management to move the bins to that road to get them emptied. I perceive that there is likely sorry, my experience of managing agents and bins is that they don't deal with them responsibly, and we have lots of bin problems. So I just, we don't know who's going to be managing it. It's going to be a mixed development of private housing and social housing or affordable housing. I foresee lots of problems with that.
Okay, well, there will be a management company, and as you say, it's likely that the affordable units will be managed by a registered social landlord. In terms of the accessibility for refuse vehicles and recycling, we have looked at that in terms of vehicle manoeuvring, and tracking has been carried out to ensure that refuse vehicles can manoeuvre in and within the site.
But the bins have got to be moved from their stores to get to where the refuse vehicles can get to. And in my experience, residents will not want to pay for that. Well,
yes, I mean there is a need for the bins to be moved, but that has been looked at by the council, that there are no concerns have been raised by the environmental health or refuse collection officers.
Okay. Right. I mean, the parking issue, I think Samir makes a good point here. There will undoubtedly be, I support restricted parking in new developments, but the reality is that there will likely be more cars than there are parking spaces. They'll park in the access road, they'll park in surrounding roads which don't have a CPZ. So the problem will be pushed on to the council and local residents. And I think we need a contribution to potentially making a CPZ of the roads that aren't currently CPZ, but that in itself will be unpopular with existing residents.
Okay, question, guys.
Yes, okay, sorry. So what are you going to do about that?
Very good.
Well, clearly we're providing the 25 spaces. We recognise that if there is any problems on surrounding streets, that would be an issue that, as I've mentioned before, is beyond the control of the applicant. But as I say, we feel we're providing the appropriate number of spaces for this particular development.
Okay, so my final question is about, I don't understand why you're coming to us with something which is completely non-conformant with our affordable housing policy. I do understand that this particular development, according to the rigged formula, cannot provide you with the profits that you need. And my view of that is, well, come back with a development that is conformant rather than trying to browbeat us into accepting a proposal that isn't. In addition to that, I note there are two blocks. One is the affordable housing hidden behind a poor door, and the other one is a private block. I don't like that either.
Well, if I deal with the second point first, the provision of the affordable within Block B is very much to ensure that the management of the affordable works, and that is certainly how registered commercial landlords prefer to manage their properties. And in terms of the affordable quantum, as I mentioned in my short presentation, that has been set out in some detail in the viability assessment and reviewed by the council's independent assessor, as well as by officers, and it has been accepted that the 12 units is all that can be delivered through this scheme. If more were to be provided, the scheme would become unviable and would not be delivered. The viability assessment process is very much a recognised process and technique of assessing the viability of a scheme. And in addition, I would add that there is provision for a review of that in due course.
Yes, thank you. I understand that. I still see a non-conformance scheme being proposed, and I don't like it. So, but thank you for your answer.
Okay, guys. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Councillor John Todd.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I just follow up on that previous question about financial viability? The report says at page 37 that your independent review shows you've reduced a negative profit. Is that correct?
Yes, if we were to provide more than 24% affordable, the scheme would not be viable.
No, you're not addressing the point I'm raising. It says it produced a negative profit of -5%. Does that mean you're building and you'll end up losing money?
No, it wouldn't lose money. No, but it would work through at all the assumed scenarios for a development to be viable.
So you've lost me. It produces a negative profit, which means you ain't making any money. That's my interpretation of that. So what profit will you make?
The development will make a standard normal profit for a developer sufficient to make the scheme come forward, and that's really what has been recognised in a viability assessment and in the assessment of that by the council's own independent auditor.
Well, to the extent that it's been suggested there'd be a further viability check, so clearly there's a hidden query in the document. But well, I'll ask the question again. What will the profit be on this project?
Well, the profit, as I say, will be standard.
Well, don't give a stand. Give me a figure.
It's sufficient to bring for the developer to want to bring the scheme forward, and in terms of the review mechanism, that allows for any changes in build costs or alterations to the scheme in due course.
Okay. Well, look, you've been like a minister. You failed to give me an answer. So on that basis, how can I accept this very unusual percentage of affordable homes?
Well, the profit is typically 20%. That's the standard.
Okay, that's helpful. So it's not negative -5%. No.
No.
Good, thank you. So is that an error in the report, or is the officer?
There's no error in the report, but I would just again just point out that these assessments are standardised and need to take the need for developer profits, or else schemes don't come forward.
Okay, but you've missed out in providing 20 flats, so you're only providing 12. That's the criteria this committee works on. Can I come back to the? I'm looking at paragraph 813, the communal heating. So it appears that it's worth you paying 86,000 to the carbon offset fund rather than fit gas boilers to not fit gas boilers. Is that correct?
That is how we work the proposal currently. Yes.
So you again, you've gone looking at paragraph 8.12. It says, very interesting, the development should achieve a minimum of 35%. Well, that's another benchmark of ours. So you've just taken us really to the wire. So how do you know it's going to achieve the minimum? Why should achieve and not will? Hello.
Well, yeah, hello. Yes, sorry, I'm just reading the paragraph you've taken me to, paragraph 8.12. Well, the scheme has to be considered in its in the round, and we've worked it up together with officers to look at the provision of reductions in CO2 emissions, and it was felt that a contribution was the appropriate way to go forward on this particular scheme.
Am I being provocative, saying it's a cheaper option, so you're quite happy to have pollution on site?
No, I think going forward in the way that we have is the appropriate way at this current point in time.
On what basis?
That we provide a mixture in terms of the gas boilers and the heat source and a financial contribution, and the assessment has been made on that basis.
I know. Okay, I hear what you said. Can you help with this? You've heard the two eloquent objectors, who I think make some very fair points, as have my colleagues. Is there any mitigation here? Is there any suggestions that you can address?
Well, there are some points which I clearly just don't agree with in terms of the proximity of the buildings, for example, to existing neighbouring properties. And I think the scale and form and massing of the building has struck an appropriate balance between making absolutely best and most efficient use of a brownfield site, whilst also respecting the context of the surrounding neighbouring properties. I think to reduce the scheme in any way would not be making best use of the site, which clearly national and local policy encourages making best use of such sites for new residential accommodation.
But coming back to my profitability point, I've nearly finished, Chair. You had the option, you've got a fairly clear site, you could have done what you want with it. And yet you come to the committee saying, please, will you let us not comply with your rules on affordability? I mean, you had the option to comply with the 40% and clearly decided at an early stage not to follow that procedure. Is there any major construction problem that's unique to this site which would impact on your profitability or not?
Well, I think just firstly, I would say we did originally look at a scheme that would be slightly larger than this. So we have already scaled back to make sure that we've taken on board advice and recommendations from officers. So we've struck the correct balance, I think, in terms of the scale of the development. And in terms of the affordable housing, we have looked at that, and as I say, we've offered up the most that we can to ensure that the development still comes forward. If we provide more, then the scheme would not be profitable and would not be delivered, and hence this type of site would not come forward.
Okay, so I'll ask my question again. Is there anything unique in this construction that inhibits you for providing the 20 affordable homes?
Well, there are some unusual costs with this particular site in terms of the substantial areas of hard standing that will need to be removed and cleared. Having gone in and understood the extent of that area, that really is quite extensive, and there will be substantial costs in clearing that. Otherwise, it's the build costs, which are considerable.
Okay.
That is, and otherwise, it's a case of what values do these properties achieve? It's as simple as that.
That's very kind. Thank you, Mr. Maxwell. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay. As for myself, I don't have any questions. Let me go back to Councillor Richard Foote. Richard, do you have any particular addition, supplement questions?
Well, the two questions I was going to ask was about affordable homes, and I'm not happy with the response about trees on site. You know, we've been talking for the last couple of years. We say, what's the net left on the site in terms of the trees that are removed and what are put back, and we always get these negative answers that don't seem to come back, and then we get quoted officers. Well, sorry, but somewhere in between here, I expect officers to listen to us if nobody else does.
Okay, Richard, let me move on. Right, because
I am, yeah.
Yeah, because I think we're also being pushed for time. In terms of some of your questions, I think Shane's been listening in and he will address some of those issues. Is there any other member of the committee that has any further questions to ask before I actually move away from David? No? Okay, David, thank you very much for your presentation. Right, and let me now move on to Shane to do an in-depth presentation and hopefully take on board and address some of the issues that have been raised by Mr. Councillor Tack, the objector, and also the applicant. Okay, Shane, off you go.
Right, thank you, Chair. I'm just going to try and share my screen, if you can bear with me, please. Are you able to see the presentation?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I've started off. Sorry. Okay. As we've heard, this item 4 relates to 104-106 Hounslow Road, Feltham. The proposal is for 51 self-contained units. Within 2 blocks. One block A, is 4-storey. In part, it's predominantly 3-storey, and there's a small element which is 2-storey. I'm just trying to move on to the next slide. So the site area is a vacant plot of land. It was formerly used as a care home known as Eldridge House. The site plan that you can see there shows that it's accessed via a long driveway from Hounslow Road. That's an existing access way. And then it's surrounded by residential housing, suburban housing. You've got Chichester Way, Denham Road, and to the north, you've got Sparrow Farm Infant School. To the rear, the south.
Sorry, Shane, the slide hasn't moved on, and I think you're talking to a different slide.
Oh, okay, sorry. Let me try and adjust. All right. Okay, my presentation's actually frozen. I'm just going to try and close it down.
Yeah, take your time, Shane. Let's see what's it called, if you can get it up and running again, yeah, because that's vitally important.
Yeah, appreciate it. It's all right. Okay. Okay, I assume you've just got me on the screen at the moment, is that right?
We've got you. We've also got the screen that says former Eldridge House 104-106 Hounslow Road, Feltham. So that's the screen where it's frozen.
Yeah.
You might want to log out of it or try to reinstall it. Okay, so while Shane's doing that, this is the trouble that we have when we are live with any of these presentations. So we're going to see whether Shane's able to resurrect that presentation. recover. Recover.
Are you able to see it now at all?
No, we're not able to see it yet.
Okay.
Take your time. Don't be flustered. Yeah.
Sure.
I take you back to my words about technical glitches earlier on in the presentation. So people who are watching, please bear with us. We will try to recover that presentation. It is absolutely important because it has all the facts that we need to make a decision. Somebody's got their phone ringing. If we can get that off.
Just to say, Sadiq in the chat is suggesting you send the presentation to him if it doesn't work. Okay. Looks like
Okay. Yeah, we've got it up. Yeah. So let's see if we can get that going.
So I'm going to
okay,
move. I'll just move down to the next slide.
Okay. Yep.
Well
done.
Okay. Do apologise. I'm just going to leave it rather than go to full screen. I'll leave it on this format. I think that's probably what threw it.
Okay.
So as you can see, that the site doesn't really have frontage to a road. It's surrounded by suburban properties, which are predominantly two-storey terraced houses or semi-detached houses. This is an aerial shot of the site as it formerly was. So this is Eldridge House, the care home that has been demolished. Again, just some more of the context. Again, that building in the centre was the Eldridge House block, which has been demolished. You've got Chichester Way close by to the north, Denham Road, and then the drive to the south, and also note the access road going up to Hounslow Road. That's just the same site, again, just from another angle, and you can see the form of housing which surrounds the site, and also their gardens and so on. That's the Eldridge House in all its former glory, since demolished, but it was in part two and three story generally. I would note that since the building was decommissioned and sold by the council, there were two further planning applications for a new care home on the site. Both, I understand, got planning permission, and that's the last approval. However, that permission has expired and it was never implemented. This is some surrounding context for the site. So on the left you have the junction of Chichester Way and Denham Road. You can see houses are generally two-storey with hipped or pitched roofs. A number of the roads nearby also have a series of single-storey garages providing some parking. The next slide, again, is just showing some more of the context. So generally two-storey houses with the pitched roofs. Image on the right is one of the parking areas at the end of Denham Road, and you can see a tree on the site. Another view, the tree on the left-hand side sits just outside of the site. I believe that some of the branches on the left-hand side of the tree would need some pruning to accommodate part of the development, but it would be retained. It is outside of the site though. One of the objectors had sent this image, the same tree I was talking about, which is labelled in red there, T29, sits just on the boundary, just outside of the site. That tree would be retained, and the vegetation, the taller vegetation to the left of that are two retained trees as well. And then beyond that, you've got the actual site, and you can sort of pick out it's vacant land. It is partly overgrown, and there's a bit of rubbish, I believe, in part. And then beyond that, you have houses on the drive. There's the access road seen from the junction with Hounslow Road, and it was mentioned earlier. There's a barrier currently on the road. A number of the neighbouring residents do have a right of way, and they have a number of garages along that route. And then further down on the left are houses on Chichester Way. the photo on the right is a view from within the site, and you can see it's overgrown. There's a lot of self-seeded shrubs and small trees. As for the proposal, we've got, this is the proposed site plan. So we have two blocks. Block A, the larger block, has the 39 units. It's got a parking area to one side. There's the energy centre up in the top corner, set amongst some parking and landscaping. The building is predominantly 3-storey. As it approaches the northern boundary, it steps down to 2-storey. Just in this element here, I don't know if my cursor's showing up.
Yeah,
and then the fourth floor, the upper floor, is recessed, and this is the outline which I'm going around now. And then on the flat roof areas, we have arrays of solar PVs, solar panels. To the rear of that main block, we have a communal open space, and you can see 2 retained trees here, the larger trees on the site. There's another tree over here which is retained, and the tree I was talking about, which is just outside the boundary, is the one here, and that was the one that was shown in the photos. And the image that we saw, the photo was taken from properties up to the north here. Block B, the second block, is a smaller block. It's set amongst landscaping. There's a communal garden at the rear, with some parking in the forecourt. Both blocks have access to the amenity space. Parking is now proposed in a number of areas in front of Block A, and we have bluebird spaces along here, and also in this part here. Just in a little bit more detail, you can see the layout of the blocks. We also have secure cycle storage in parts within the building, and also shelters outside. There is a refuse drawing which I'll show later, but there's a number of refuse storage areas. There's one up to the north here, one in the centre of the block here, and then there's 2 bins here. These are the upper floor plans. I probably won't go into those into detail, but there's a mixture of units. That's the upper floor, the 4th floor that we've referred to in a bit more detail. As you can see, it's set in well in from the edges of the roof. In elevation, you can see that the buildings are 3-storey. You've got the buildings in context with neighbouring development over here onto the right. The upper floor is this one here. It's a bit washed out on the image, I'm afraid, but it is secondary to the main block. So the bulk of the building is the coloured section. Again, just another view of the 2 blocks. This is the perspective from the drive, the houses on the drive. You're looking at the long elevation of Block A. There's the upper floor, which is recessed from the edges, and then over here is Block B in section. Just another view. Again, in context, they sit comfortably with the scale of the surrounding houses, which are, as we talked about, 2 and 3 stories, and just some further elevations, which I won't dwell on. The buildings themselves would be of brick construction. There's a lot of detail provided by some of the louvered screens, different courses of bricks, the canopies and window detail and so on. The upper floor is more of a lightweight structure, which would be comprised of cladding, and it would be distinguished from the main bulk of the building, which is the 3-storey element. We have a perspective drawing looking down the access driveway towards the front corner of Block A, and you can just make out the upper floor, which is recessed at the top there, and then further down the road is Block B. In terms of the refuse servicing arrangements, we do have a tracking drawing, which you can see in this slide, which shows that a refuse vehicle is able to enter the site and reverse to leave in a forward direction. The issue which is referred to in my report is that Block A has 2 bins for which a vehicle will not be able to reach unless they do a reversing manoeuvre, which we thought was too long. Kira may be able to assist with that later on. And the compromise was that the 2 bins from that site would need to be moved on collection day to a space alongside Block A, and I can go back to a drawing to show where if necessary. In respect of the trees to be retained, we have had an arboriculturalist report submitted with the application, and there's only one tree which is of anything other than low or no appreciable value, which is being removed, and that's the one which is in this corner here, and it falls within the footprint of Block B. And it's a silver birch of moderate quality. The two higher quality trees are these two here. They're both retained. The orange, small orange shading indicates an area where there may be some pruning of the canopy. The tree that we saw earlier on in the photographs is up here, and again to the side there may be a need where it overhangs some of the parking works and so on for that to be pruned. There's another larger tree here which is also retained. The question was asked how many trees would be removed. From memory, it was around 15. All 15 single trees. There's a number of smaller groups of trees which are more or less shrubs. You can see them in these grey circles here. They represent these trees. They're all sort of self-seeded and of low value. And the site itself is very overgrown with various weeds, and the arboriculturalist report did confirm that the only tree of anything other than a low value that's being removed is the one tree here, which is the silver birch. There's just some information which I may refer to in respect of the traffic and so on. As far as the assessment goes, I mean, I'd just like to clarify. I did go to the site, and I didn't say I didn't go to the site. I definitely went to the site. The photos that we saw are from me, and I have been down Hounslow Road. I think I made the comment I don't regularly go down the road. In respect of the housing, all of the homes will meet our minimum size requirements. The amenity space for the scheme achieves our minimum recommended standards for both the private space and the communal space. The parking is there's 25 spaces. That was reduced from a higher amount, and that was subject to comments from Transport for London, who are the Highways Authority covering Hounslow Road, and we think that in the end the 25 is a reasonable balance. As far as addressing the concerns of neighbours, we did have a series of objections which were referred to in the council's presentation and also from Mr. Mould and in the submissions. And in part, the scheme was amended to try and address those concerns. So the upper floor, if I can go to my last slide, upper floor was amended to reduce it in size so it wasn't as prominent. So on the left-hand side of this slide, this was the originally proposed 4th floor, and then to the right we have the amended 4th floor, and its recess has been increased considerably to reduce the bulk and the apparent bulk of the upper floor. We also had parking originally proposed alongside one side of the access route, the access driveway. So there was a number of spaces here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 spaces along the top, and it was originally proposed that this would be a shared surface for pedestrians and vehicles, and both TfL and our transport team objected to that arrangement, and we also had some concerns, as we've heard from Mr. Mould, about parking and disturbance from vehicles along here. So in response, the applicant has amended that part of the site to delete those parking spaces. There'd now be a dedicated footpath along one side of the access route and then a single driveway. And we think that with that would make management and enforcement of any unauthorised parking much easier, because obviously it would be clear if someone's parking where they shouldn't be. In respect of the affordable housing matter, through some discussion with the applicant and some reconfiguration of the floor space, they were able to increase the offer from the original 22% to 24%. the reference to the 5% negative profit. I'm sorry for the confusion there. That's probably my fault as how I've referred to that. The gist of that is that the scheme won't generate a normal developer profit. The applicant's financial viability appraisal, I think, indicated it would make just a normal profit. Our own independent consultant carried out a review of their appraisal, and I think some of the variables we found to be a little different, and we actually found that it was probably likely to be less viable than had been submitted. And so there would still be a profit, but it'll be a bit lower than the normal profit. So the 5% is that reference there. So it's 5% below what the normal arrangement would be. Overall, however, we think the offers the maximum reasonable. There is a late stage review. If the development generates a more profit, then the developer would be obliged to pay some another contribution in respect of affordable housing. We have 8 London affordable rent units and then 4 shared ownership. Overall, throughout the scheme, there's a mix of units as well, a reasonable mix. And with all of the conditions that we're recommending and the planning obligations, so I think there's also a discussion about the energy performance of the building and the development. Initially, we did have serious concerns, and more information was submitted from the applicant to address that. Since then, we've also realised that we should be able to maximise the improvements even further through increasing the power efficiency of the solar panels. In the latest submission of the applicant, they were using what you call sort of a standard panel, with the condition which is included in the recommended, the updated condition. We've specified that they should use a higher performing PV system, and that will actually increase their performance beyond what is referred to in the report. So with all of that, we think that it is a good use of the site. The site does sit within an established residential area, and it is of a scale which is compatible with the area. We think the amenity impacts in respect of the neighbours is acceptable with the safeguarding conditions we've recommended, and therefore we have recommended approval.
Okay, Shane, thank you for that presentation. I'm going to move on to questions to Shane from members. These are just questions. Then after that, we will go into a debate and comments session. And after that, we will go to the vote. So just questions of Shane. Can I ask Councillor Richard Foote to ask his questions to Shane, please? Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Chair. 2 quick questions. The 24% that they talked about as being affordable housing, there's some terrible noise going on. I don't know what that is.
Hang on, Richard, before you move on. Can everybody else mute their microphones, please? Only Richard's to be on. Thank you.
Right. On regards to the 24%, I'm a bit confused. I mean, what would have actually gone into creating this situation? I mean, would there be, for instance, at some stage, the land value that was put or was originally put on it when purchasing it, would that come in as an element of cost that then sets up the affordable situation?
Shane, you're on mute. You need to unmute yourself, Shane, and then start again.
Sorry. Thank you, Chair. Shane here. I was just stating that the assessment that was carried out on behalf of the council is by an independent consultant. I'm afraid I'm not an expert on that. I understand that the value put in for the site was negligible, and there was that's the basis that the viability was considered. So it's purely sort of considering the costs of the scheme, the build costs, finance and so on, versus the value of the sales and rental value.
Right, okay. So what you're saying is that the land value had insignificant effect upon the overall cost of the scheme.
That is my understanding, and just to go on.
It's a bit difficult, obviously, where we've got land that once belonged to Hounslow Council that was then sold to a developer to build something else, and has then been sold on to now build houses. So I'm just trying to figure out whether we're responsible, somebody else responsible, or nobody's responsible. But what you're telling me is that it's insignificant, so therefore not anybody responsible. Right, the other question mark was, I'm not quite sure what you mean by people, and I've heard the statement before, never got a proper answer as far as I'm concerned, but what's a low value tree? Does it mean that it's not much good for firewood, or it's no good for building beams to go in houses, or what? I'm not quite sure what you mean by low value. Yeah,
well, the arboriculturalists, they have a method of classifying the amenity value of trees. Obviously, you know, all trees I think have got value, but I was referring to their terminology there. So it's based on the health of the tree, the size of the tree, the species of the tree, whether it's sort of native to that part of the country, ecological value, the rarity, and its lifespan, expected lifespan. So if something, and also its location, if it's inappropriately located and it's right on a boundary wall or something, it's going to have no value. I think they've got categories A, B, and C. So high value, moderate value, low value. Then you have a further category which is called U, and that's no value. And they're trees which are either dead or dying, weeds, or inappropriately planted ones, right next to a wall, as I said. So the only tree that was higher than the C, higher than the low value, was the one I showed, which was the silver birch, which was a B value, so it was a medium value tree. All the rest were either C, which is the low value, or which means they're quite small, they're self-seeded, they're right on the boundary fencing, and they don't have much of a expected lifespan for various reasons. Either they're, as I said, inappropriately located, or they're in poor health. Okay, so in fact, when you talk about value, none of that value actually relates to its indication about CO2 and the atmosphere. I don't think that appears, comes into it, but in a way it does. If the size of the tree is obviously, and its lifespan is if they're both large and long, then clearly if it's retained, and it's going to have that value going forward. Smaller trees obviously would have less effect. Yeah, I appreciate that. It's just in modern day we tend to be looking at trees in a slightly different way. Okay, no problem. That's my questions, Chair. Okay, but before I move on to Councillor Samia Chaudhry, I wonder whether Peter Matthews can shed some light on these values of profitability, because obviously he's our Director of Strategic Housing, and this is, I think, within his remit, and he might be able to shed a bit more light. Peter.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure I can shed more light beyond what's been said. So the Housing Department employs a viability consultant, and the role of the viability consultant is to assess the applications put forward by developers, and in particular the viability assessments put forward by applicants. And the purpose of that is, in a sense, to challenge those applications. So in this case, I think what the officers report in is that our consultant, who has assessed the viability assessment put forward by the applicant is broadly agreeing with the viability assessment put forward. They seem to have gone further to say that actually that their own or our own viability assessment shows that the scheme is less viable than the developer believes, which I think is quite unusual.
Okay. Okay, Richard, does that shed light to what you've been asking?
Yeah, come back on. Yes, Chair. Yeah, it sheds light on it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's move on then. Yeah.
Okay.
Councillor Samia Chaudhry to ask questions to Shane.
Thank you, Chair. Shane, just a couple of things. The time you have taken the pictures, I'm sure everybody is aware, and we have been talking about the parking issues in nearby roads as well. You know, I have just read it here that the existing driveway is only utilised for the new residents and the existing neighbours. What restrictions are we going to put on there? Because at the moment, whenever I turn left to right from Hounslow Road, that driveway is blocked regardless. It's 10:30 in the evening. Both ends are blocked, and in the morning especially we have Carlton surgery right next to it, and I do see day in day out that patients have been parking there and under the tree as well. We haven't got any restrictions so far there for people not to park there or find the space or walk to the surgery. It's not just an issue with, I think it's 102, but I think it's for all of that corner. People just block their car there and walk out. Walk out of their car and leave the cars there. I have witnessed the cars there for good 10-15 minutes until they finish from the surgery, and that's the pressure which I think is already there with parking. We have no restrictions at all.
Shane?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. Well, at the moment, obviously, with the site not being developed and not in any active use, and the end of the road being gated off, there's obviously an opportunity for people to park in and utilise some of that space at the junction of the driveway and Hounslow Road. Once the site would be brought into use, then as a driveway and access road, that opportunity would be gone. As far as managing the access driveway and the parking within the site, we have recommended a condition requiring the submission of a parking management plan. I think it's number 15 on page 54 of the agenda. And that's going to require details of how spaces on the site would be allocated, and also how parking would be enforced. Now, with the amendment to the proposal, there's no parking proposed along the length of the access road, which it would have been a bit ambiguous, and I could see not a situation where people may have been tempted to go and use that as a parking spot without permission, whereas now there's no parking. It's very clear that no vehicles should be on that stretch of the road or in front where the junction is with Hounslow Road. And I think that in itself, and the use of the site, people coming and going through it, would prohibit people parking across a driveway of a development. So with that condition, I think that matter is something which we can address.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I ask one more question, Chair?
Yes, you certainly may. Go on.
Another one is, Shane, I've just read on these papers that I think I did ask David as well when he commented that it's a local authority. The control parking zone, which we have not got on the nearby roads, with the new residents, if it is approved, they will not be allowed to have a parking permit. How are you going to restrict that with the parking? The people will not be able to apply for the parking permits with only 25 parking spaces there at the new site if it goes ahead?
Yes, obviously not all of the area is subject to a CPZ, but the obligation that's referred to would prohibit new residents of this scheme, of this site, having a permit for any existing CPZ or any future one that's ever introduced. The actual parking numbers is I believe commensurate with the level of car ownership within units within the area. I think there was analysis carried out in the transport assessment which looked at what the rate of car ownership for people living in units is, and comparing it and then applying it to this scheme. And both our transport team and myself can agree that there's an adequate amount of parking for the development. There's obviously also a travel plan. We also require good and secure cycle parking, so we want to encourage people to access the site through walking and cycling, and with all of those measures being secured by conditions, we think again that's a matter that's adequately addressed.
Samir, is that okay?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, right. Let me move on. Thank you, Shane, for that. Okay, let's move on to Councillor Preetam Garawal.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll carry on from that where Councillor Chaudhary started. By experience, what people do, people use the roads, they are not CPZ controlled. So are we going to do sort of consultation on the roads? They are not CPZ at the moment. And if so, are the developers going to contribute towards that? In some schemes, we had that. The developer will contribute. For us to consult on those roads, they are not CPZ. That's my first question. Number second, loads of times traffic has been mentioned. Have we done a traffic assessment on that? Because it's mentioned that 100 cars are passed there every hour, and this will add up to the traffic. Those two questions, please.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. In respect of the first matter, which was the CPZ, the nature of the development, so its size and its characteristics are of such, and the amount of parking that's provided on site are of a nature which we don't think that there is a need to amend the parking controls within the area. We think that the parking is actually at the right balance between providing for the site and as I said, with the other measures like the encouraging walking and cycling, we think it is adequate for the development. In respect of the transport assessment, my understanding is the reference to the 100 movements is 100 movements a day rather than per hour. I think in the addendum report, sorry I don't have the page number, but we did clarify that the peak hour movements were 14 vehicle movements in the morning peak, 8 to 9 a.m. and then I think 6 between the evening peak at 5 to 6 p.m. So the reference to the 100 is actually just a misunderstanding of the transport assessment. But I mean, if Kieran, our transport officer, has anything to add, he may come in there if I've not got that quite right.
Okay, let me get Kieran in. Kieran?
Yes, hello, Kieran Coughlin here, transport officer. Yeah, what Shane has said is broadly accurate. Since the transport assessment came in, we had a look at the trip generation figures that they set out, and we weren't fully happy with the comparable sites they'd chosen to understand the amount of vehicles coming in and out. So we got them to go back and look at more comparable sites. So the figures have changed slightly. So I could just bring them up here. So in the morning peak, it will be even fewer vehicles. There'll be 12 two-way vehicle movements in the morning, and in the evening it'd be slightly higher, so it'd be 9. but that would equate to 1 every 7.5 minutes and 1 every 15 minutes. I got that right? No, I haven't. It's 1 every 5 minutes and 1 every 6 minutes approximately. So we don't think it would have a significant impact on Hounslow Road.
Okay, if we can all mute our microphones, other than Councillor Preetham Garawal, who should have his microphone on. Preetham, off you go.
Thank you, Chair. That's fine. Yeah, that was my question answered. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Preetham. Councillor John Todd. Councillor Todd, are you with us?
Sorry, Councillor Todd, you're on mute.
Am I off now?
No, we can hear you, but we can't see you.
My camera's on. I apologise, Ken.
Oh, I can see you now.
Yeah, thank you. I apologise for the. Yeah. Shane, I want to go back to the viability and the. I read from the paper there was a pre-app meeting. Hello.
Hello. Sorry.
There was a pre-app meeting. Your report shows.
Yes, there was a request for pre-application advice. The applicant met a number of officers. It wasn't me. I wasn't involved at that stage.
Okay.
I don't understand. Sorry, it's not my understanding that viability would have been discussed at that stage.
No, I'm not suggesting that at all. It's an open question. I assume, though, that the percentage of affordable homes would be in the discussion.
Yes, it would be. We would have discussed the policy requirement, which will require a minimum of 40%, subject to the viability being reviewed.
Okay. Well, I agree with that. Can you help me? In paragraph 1.2 on page 21, you describe the 12 affordable homes. So 8 are London affordable rent and 4 are shared ownership. How long do the affordable rent, if I'm given one of those properties, how long am I allowed to rent it for?
Well, the terms of the tenure and who can go in it, and the actual rent level as well, and how long would be determined in our legal agreement. We would be setting out provisions which cover that. My understanding, as long as you remain eligible or you have those circumstances which meet our criteria, that would remain in perpetuity.
Okay. So I want to link all these matters. So can we just recap on the viability? We're told in the equation that the land value was very poor. They should have provided 20 affordable homes, but they provided 8 rent and 4 shared. So they retain, as I understand it, the ownership of the London affordable rent houses. Is that correct?
Excuse me. I think that can depend on the arrangement that they may come to have with a registered provider. But if they own the freehold for the site, then they might be leasing it to a provider, or they might selling them on. I don't know. I think we heard that those arrangements aren't final yet. Okay,
well, as a simple layman, if I'm renting it, I can't own it at the same time, can I? So whoever's put in there under the affordable rent scheme, the owner or leaseholder, whoever it is, hasn't disposed of that property, so they retain the ownership and the value.
Yeah, I mean that sounds right. I mean that the appraisal did account for both homes for sale and for rent.
Okay, it sounds as if I'm trying to trick you. I'm not. I'm trying to. get some reassurance on what I consider a basic equation. And so I'm
Sorry,
still.
Councillor Todd, just 1 second.
Yes.
Can the person, the member, the officer whose phone is constantly going off, can they turn that phone off? It's annoying, right? And Councillor Todd needs to be heard. Councillor Todd, off you go, sir.
Thank you, Chair. It's not me. What initiated the? Let's come on to the further assessment, viability assessment. If there is an obligation to provide greater funds, is it my understanding is they would provide monies and not properties? Is that correct?
Yeah, in this case, that would be the case, because it's a scheme which would most likely just be built out in one go. So they wouldn't be, the other properties would have been possibly sold on, so they wouldn't be able to be converted. So yes, we would take a contribution.
But given that your independent person said in simple terms the developer's got his fingers wrong, why did he then ask for it to be reassessed at a later stage?
Can I, well, just clarify that our assessor found that they were in broad agreement with most of what was said in the original appraisal. I think we found that it was marginally less profitable than had been put forward, and so the normal level of development profit wasn't going to be achieved, but there'd still be a profit, and therefore that justified not fully meeting the policy requirement for the 40%. Our policy in that case, if approved, is to include in a planning obligation a requirement that the viability be reassessed later on through the development once we know for certain what the values are and what's been achieved. Then obviously if there's any improvement, then the council can share that improvement, and we can get a further contribution, hopefully bringing it up to the policy requirement.
But what I'm trying to drill into is what motivated you or any other officer to have queries that led to them suggesting a further review? Because it's almost directly contradicts your earlier assessment. These guys haven't got their figures right.
Well, what we did, we appraised their figures, and I get from our consultant a report which sets out what we think of the viability, whether it's accurate, whether it's a fair one, and then it gives me a conclusion whether or not the maximum reasonable amount of affordable housing has been achieved and what's going to be viable. It's just a standard policy requirement for all schemes that don't meet the 40% that we do a review later on during the course of the development. So if we don't meet the 40%, it's a standard obligation that the developer is therefore required to meet later on.
Okay, I'm milking it a bit. Okay, can I come on to page 33 and return to the gas aspect? I found it very interesting, your evidence to the committee, when you said that, amongst other things, you'd adjusted the type of solar panels to be used. Was that to get it up to 35% for the purpose of your equation?
No. So the energy report that we had considered used a mixture of air source heat pumps and solar PV panels, and that got them to the 35.1% reduction. However, on review, it was noted that the solar panels that were being used were more of the standard efficiency type. I can give you a number. It doesn't mean much to me, but it was 270 and that's the reference, where we found that there's another model, another category which is more efficient, which I think is 400, so it's almost double the efficiency, and it was recommended that we address that and try and maximize the carbon reduction. So that's specified in one of the conditions, which has been amended in the addendum, that instead of the standard type of PV panel, that they use a higher powered, more efficient one. And so that in effect will actually increase that 35.1%.
Okay, but given their considerable obligation to the carbon offset fund, why didn't you put pressure on them to reduce the amount of gas being used in the block?
Well, we have had a consultant who had looked at the arrangements, so reviewed their energy report on our behalf, and we had looked at the mix of energy and the renewable energy options. This is a scheme which has got a mix. Sometimes we get ones where it's just all gas. It does depend on costs and the arrangements and so on. In this case, the opportunity to enhance the overall performance has been taken. They've done some recalculations. We've found some areas where it's a more straightforward win, and that is to improve the performance of the solar panels. I mean, gas is something which will eventually supposedly be phased out. In this case, it's only half of the scheme. The other half being the solar panels. It does meet the requirement for the minimum of 35%. We think with the condition we're recommending, we're going to go beyond that. And then on top of that, to get you all the way down to the zero carbon, there is a contribution.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Client Shane.
Okay, Shane, I've got a number of questions because these have been borne out from what the objectors have said, and also Councillor Tack, along with the applicant and certainly some of the members. In terms of the big developers that operate around Hounslow, would you have an idea of what profit levels they work at?
Well, for the purposes of local authorities looking at the profitability, there are, and we look to a sort of a standard approach because we always use the same consultant. If it's just a private scheme, I think the profit is around 20% on the gross value of the development. Where you've got affordable housing is a component of that, and it's much more likely to be taken up. The profit level of that part of the scheme is a lot lower, and what tends to happen is the private and the affordable, get blended into a profit number. So the 20% is sometimes a little bit lower. In this case, I'm just reading the report on my screen just before. The scheme is achieving around a 14% profit level on the gross development value, which is below that sort of 20 area, and that's sort of where the query is as to why they weren't achieving the normal profit level, and that was my reference to the sort of 5% under.
Sure.
But that's a sort of a standard is the sort of 15 to 20%.
Okay, because looking at other bigger developers, some of them, if they don't hit the 25% mark, they just don't build. That's what I was driving at. Okay, well, look, there was a mention of that these are in 2 blocks, and I think one of the members suggested a poorer block, right? But in terms of management, is it not more efficient to have a managed block for the social element than have them scattered all over the place? And what is our policy in trying to determine that they all be either within one confine, or are we allow them to be scattered all over the place?
Yeah, the the preference obviously is for something which is easier to manage, and my understanding is that registered providers do like a self-contained arrangement. Obviously, though, we don't want to have any real distinction between different types of properties. The size of the units here, the finishes to the buildings, the landscaping and so on is all the same. People in Block B have access to the communal garden as well as their own garden. So the look of the development and the way it functions is no different between the two blocks. But yes, there is a preference for something which is just easier to manage. Obviously, it's all in the one building. Okay.
A lot of members have been sort of, I suppose, disquiet about the number of trees and the quality of trees. Now, if we put the quality of trees, because you've in your presentation did a very good job of saying what type of trees and the classification. But what my question to you is, in terms of the loss and the gain, is there a net gain from the development for additional trees being planted? Because a lot of, I mean, I know Councillor Richard Foote is very passionate about trees, and Councillor Mel Collins, who's actually not on the committee tonight, but you know, so is there a net gain of trees in the overall development?
No, the number of trees, if you're just looking straight at tree numbers, there's more trees being removed than are shown being planted. But obviously, we have a condition which requires a landscaping plan to come in. The only thing I would add to that, though, is it's the value of the trees is important, and I'll go back to my comment about a lot of them being sort of self-seeded, more shrub-like type specimens, with inappropriate locations, right up against timber boundary fences, that sort of thing. They're long term. They're not supposed to be there. They're not going to have much value in the future because they're going to be removed anyway. Purely, they'll be damaging fencing and so on.
Okay.
The trees of value are retained apart from one.
Okay, so let's talk about the trees that are classified as A, B, or C. Right? Is there a net gain on those trees? Because I know that there's one trees being removed. Is there additional trees being planted in that category A, B, C?
I think there's opportunities to plant trees. We don't have a fully detailed landscape plan, but you can see, I mean, at the rear of Block B, for example, there's obviously possibility of planting some small trees there, and then again, possibly in the main area behind Block A, there could be some opportunity for further planting. So I think that's something which we always do look for in a landscape plan as in the detail, what the planting is. We don't just want small hedges and flower beds. We do want to see tree planting, and in this case, obviously, if you're taking a tree out, we want to find somewhere where you can put another one in. So that would certainly be a consideration when the details come in, but that at this stage, they haven't got a fully marked up landscape drawing.
Okay, could we encourage them, right? And if it needs be, because I know that Richard Foote may join me in this, that we put that as a condition that wherever we could have additional trees being planted.
Yeah, yes, we could. I think we could be explicit in the landscape condition.
Okay. My last question to you is related to the bins. Sorry. Yeah, my last question to you, Shane, is in regards to the bins. Now, there were some areas that are very accessible, some bins that are not that accessible. I think in the body of the report there is, but I want to hear it from yourself, that would we ask them to strict adherence to a waste management plan?
Yes. So if I'm not sure is my screen being shared, it probably isn't. Sure.
What we're seeing is a site plan, okay. Probably of a floor plan.
Yeah. Okay. So on the floor plan, the the issue that we have that I've referred to in the report, the main block, the servicing of that is fully compliant. There's a bin storage for the second block, which meant that a vehicle would have to reverse quite a way down into this turning head, and we weren't sure that that was the most safe manoeuvre. So the idea was to move on collection day some of the bins just to this boundary here, and a vehicle would do a very short manoeuvre, which doesn't raise any safety concerns. But that would require, obviously, on the collection day, the management of the block to just wheel the bins out around 20 or so meters from the front of block B to that spot. That's not something which is always, that's obviously not an ideal arrangement. The alternative really was then to look at completely sort of overhauling the whole layout and design, and it would have resulted in the loss of a good chunk of block B. And on balance, we thought that the disruption and the inconvenience from that particular arrangement, one day a week, wasn't of such a problem that we couldn't accommodate that. So with the condition, we think that is something which is manageable. I think I do have a condition 16, which is on page 55 of the agenda, and that's requiring further information about those waste and recycling arrangements. So we will confirm that all of the bins are of adequate size and they're secure and so on, but it also includes how the bins are going to be managed on collection day for block B. So with that, I think the arrangement is acceptable. It's not ideal, but it's something that's manageable.
Okay, my one last question. Sorry, I know I'm pushing you a bit. With sites such as these becoming far and few between, and obviously there's an increase in the demand for housing, right, which I know the mayor is pushing as well. Is there likely to be in the future a greater impact on densities? Because at the moment, I think this is one of the things that was being addressed by a few councillors in terms of their questioning. In the future, not just this site, but sites like this, is there going to be a greater impact on densities?
Well, yeah, I mean, yes, in short, obviously there's currently very high demand for housing, especially affordable housing. To address that, we've, as a council, are reviewing our local plan, which is in a very advanced stage. And we also have to meet the new London plan minimum annual housing delivery targets. And the households is going to go from 822 per year up to about 1,700. What that means, obviously, is that we are going to be relying on some big sites, and we're trying to direct those to the most appropriate locations. So your town centres, your opportunity areas, and so on. But for the rest of the borough, there is going to be some places where there would be intensification. Obviously, we want to make sure that it still is comfortable with the character of the area and it addresses all the other requirements, especially amenity space and parking in this type of location. But yes, there are requirements to look at all sorts of sites, not just the big sites. We need to try and find spaces anywhere that's appropriate to make the best use of the land. Obviously, this site previously did have a fairly large building on the site. It's been vacant for a number of years, and the scheme that we've got, we think, is a good balance between optimizing the site, so getting the most on it, but also protecting the amenity of the neighbours. There's good separation from the neighbours. There's good amenity space on the site, and so on.
Okay, Shane. Look, thank you for that. Right. Okay, members.
Chair, sorry, you forgot me.
Oh, the Guy, did I forget you?
Yes, you did. You probably thought I was greedy in the last session. But,
No. Guy, my apologies. Right, Shane, before you go, please assist Guy in his questions. Guy, off you go.
Yeah, just a couple, I think. The first thing is you mentioned the mix of the affordable housing and said it was good. Could you sort of clarify what it is?
Yes. Okay. So overall, there's 12 homes. Eight of those are the London affordable rent, and then 4 are for shared ownership. Within the London affordable rent, you have 2 one-bedroom, 2-persons units. You have 4 2-bedroom, 3-person units, and you have 2 2-bedroom, 4-person units. And the shared ownership there's they're all 2-bed, 4-person.
So there are no 3 beds.
There aren't any 3-bed. Obviously, within the range I gave you, there's a mix of 1-person, 2, 3, and 4-person type ones.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. What I always have a concern about where we've got 100 flats and 10 parking spaces. My assumption is they'll be sold off to the highest bidder, which means that there'll be absolutely nothing for the people in the affordable estate, which causes lots of problems. Causes lots of problems to people who are basically forced to take those flats and don't have anywhere to park. It's not as bad here because I think that currently there is some available street parking, albeit limited. But can you confirm that's the case? That we can't reserve any of these spaces for the affordable?
That hasn't. Sorry, that hasn't been something that's been secured. I would note that the Block B, the affordable one, there's 3 wheelchair units on the ground floor, and then if you look on the floor plan, which hopefully is still on the screen, there's the 3 wheelchair spaces directly in front of that site. So at the very least, I would expect those ones would directly relate to those units. The other parking spaces, we haven't had any arrangement to do that. It would be hard to secure it in that way. We do have a parking management plan condition which gives us an opportunity to look at whether there's a distribution of spaces between the types of tenure and so on. But that's something which would be determined once we receive the details from the applicant.
I think it's a difficult issue, but I just want to get it on in the thought process. That's all. I had 2 other questions. So I think the bin. I'm happy about the arrangement for the bins. I think, provided there's decent management in place. I'm really concerned about access, because that's a long, narrow road which will have a pavement on it now, and it'll have, unless there is very active parking management down that road, the bin lorries will not be able to get access, and we've got that. That we have that problem everywhere. So can you please make sure that the parking management addresses that specifically?
Yes, I mean, when we're looking, we've got a condition which requires the final detail of the access road itself, and obviously also the one about landscaping. And within both those, we'd be looking for sort of physical measures which would deter parking, unauthorised parking.
Thank you. And the very final question is, you mentioned, we were talking about profitability, and you said 14%, and you said, as I think is a standard thing, review later if they do better than expected. Do they start paying at 14.1% or at 20%?
My understanding, and again, I'm afraid I'm not an expert on that, would be that we look to share the profits. We would tend to, my understanding is, would be after the 20% is achieved, after a normal sort of profit is achieved. I'd probably have to leave it at that because I'm not an expert, but that's my understanding of it.
They're obviously quite happy with 14%, and I think that we should at least share profits beyond 14%, not beyond 20. Otherwise, it's a bit pointless having that provision.
Yeah, I think the risk obviously is that not all the numbers are necessarily because they're forecast and so on at the moment. They're preliminary in effect. It's only on.
That's the whole point of the.
Yeah, but then we would probably want to treat them as per any other applicant and let them achieve a normal level of profit before we started to go beyond that.
Guy?
Well, I would like you to do something different, but anyway, that was the question. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Chair.
So
can
Jimmy?
I just mention?
Yes.
I was hoping I wouldn't have to say this tonight in relation to the agenda, but the guillotine period is coming up, and so.
Okay. Can somebody move suspension of standing orders, please?
I do so move.
Okay. Can somebody second?
Yeah, I'll second, Chair.
Okay, Richard, thank you very much. So that's moved and it'll be carried until the business is concluded. Okay, so we've had all the questionings to Shane. Shane, stay there. We're going to go into a debate or for comments. Again, I'm going to follow this in the usual order, alphabetically first. So Councillor Richard Foote. Richard, any comment or any debate on this planning application?
I think most of the debate has probably been picked up within the questions, I would think. But I think that in general, yeah, I'm, as you pointed out, a bit concerned about the trees. They come up with some very glib statements about self-seeding. I don't know what that means really, because are they saying if it's an oak tree which self-seeds another oak tree or two, that they're going to be torn up and thrown away because they're self-seeded? You know, I've got 2 self-seeded trees in my garden, which my 2 sons, when they were very, very young, picked up the seedlings and transplanted them. I now have fully grown trees there. Each one is named after each of my sons.
Okay, very good.
There are things where it means something entirely different, you know, and sometimes I think we use the book to give us a statement rather than actually looking at behind it and in the depth. So really that's that. And other than that, yeah, obviously very disappointed at the 24%, and have really not understood why. That, you know, there's some economics in here that we're not party to, that really would reach that stage. That's one of the reasons why I asked about land prices, how they were included in, or what element did they take up in assessing the actual cost, the original, you know, the cost of building, and it's told that it was minimal. Well, okay, price of land in West London, would have thought it'd been a bit more than minimal, but still, yeah, I don't think there's much I can add onto what has already been asked and answered by questions, Chair.
Okay, let me move on to Councillor Samia Chaudhry. Samia, any comments, any debate?
Thank you, Chair. Just saying a couple of things, like for you, other colleagues have said about waste and recycling. We've just got to make sure that there is enough space for the big lorries to go in. Parking issues, trees, Councillor Richard has mentioned, and that's about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Samia. Councillor Preetham Garwal.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of points, if I may, please.
Yeah.
Number one, it was mentioned about parking spaces for affordable housing. I personally think there should be proportionate parking should be given to those affordable housing. If it's possible, put a condition on it. And the other one is trees has been discussed in length. You've done that as well, and Councillor Foote has done it. Why can't we put a condition there that apart from the self-seeded or shrubs, the good trees, every tree removed should be replaced. Is it possible to put a condition there, please?
Yeah, if you're moving it, and obviously we can get Richard or one of the other members to second that. I don't think that's unreasonable condition to have on this application.
Yeah, I'm moving it, Chair.
Okay, can somebody second it?
I can second it, Chair.
Okay, so Samia seconded. Right, so I just need to now stop the debate, go to the vote on the condition, for the condition to be added. So let's be absolutely clear. We are moving a condition for the trees, additional trees to be added, right? And I think Shane suggested some behind block B and some further in front of block A, but I will leave that as and when they present which trees that they're going to put forward. But in general, the sentiment is that we want additional trees.
Yep.
Is that fair assessment of what's been discussed?
Yep.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
So let's move to the vote on the condition of the trees, right? So Councillor Foote, in addition to adding the trees condition.
Yes, I'm in favour of that, Chair.
Okay.
I think there was the proviso, perhaps not picked up in that, was that after we taken out self-seeding out of the situation and shrubs, but yeah, I generally that's what I think is right.
Okay,
yeah.
my understanding, and I stand to be corrected, is that the self-seeding, the shrubs who have no significant value, they're not part of the equation. We're talking about trees types A, B, and C, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to planting additional trees, we don't want shrubs. Okay, all right. So we want good quality trees, right? So Councillor Richard Foote has said yes, that he's in favour of that condition being added. Councillor Samia Chaudhry.
Thank you, Chair. Good quality trees, definitely. Yes, I'm in favour of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Samia. Councillor Preetham Garwal.
Yes, I'm in favour of that, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Guy Lambert, in addition to the trees.
Yes, I'm in favour.
Okay. Councillor John Todd.
John Todd agrees.
Okay, that's fine. And I myself, Councillor Amrit Mann, agrees for the condition to be levied. Right. So that's unanimous by this committee. Okay. Now let's go back to the debate. So we were at Councillor Preetham Garwal. So you had, did you have anything further to add, Preetham?
No, that's fine. Thank you,
Okay,
Chair.
that's fine. Okay, let's move on to Councillor Guy Lambert. Comment on debate.
Okay, I was dismayed to see this this thing coming forward with 24%, whatever it is, affordable housing. I thought those days were over, where applications that had been through pre-app were coming forward with less than 40. This used to be regular 3 or 4 years ago, and the last couple of years I haven't seen one until this, so I was dismayed, and I'm still dismayed. I would like to move an amendment, and I'd like to move an amendment that any assessed profit above that, whatever the baseline is, 14% or whatever it is, should form part of the profit sharing that Shane says would normally kick in at 20%.
Okay, before you move in, right, and before somebody seconds it, there are, I mean, from what you've just said, Councillor Lambert, is that for a number of years you did get the 40%. We as a local authority got the 40%, but for a number of years we've not seen the 40%. And being in property, I can understand why we're not getting it, because one, the large sites are disappearing faster than you could say London Borough, Hounslow around our areas, and also the market for property is moving south, especially with the COVID epidemic. You can't find buyers with a microscope, and hence the profits that were being generated are not being generated, and people are having to take a lot much lower values, in which case the gross development value falls, in which case the level of social also falls in the same vein. So I think that's what it is. I'm just minded, and I would take legal advice on this, that if we were to shackle the developer on 14%, and they can't deliver this, then we will get no delivery of a development whatsoever. So Jimmy, can I ask you to pick your brains whether we can tie a developer in this mode and see if a development becomes unviable? If it's already tottering, we don't want to sort of sink it, as it were.
I'm not certain this is a legal question. You almost set at a policy there. I think on the chat, Peter Matthews has mentioned about 14.9% as a base rate. I don't know if he wanted to come in on that point.
Okay, can I ask him to come in, and then I'll come back to you, Jimmy?
Yeah.
Okay, Peter.
Chair, thank you. I think in this question, I think where we are is that in relation to the 14%, I think what should happen is that the review mechanism is triggered once the developer were to exceed the 14.9%. And I think that is how the trigger review mechanism should work, and that's how we would apply it. If they were to exceed that profitability, we would enter into a conversation with them actually to reassess the viability of the scheme, to reassess the profit level, and to then determine whether we should be seeking additional affordable housing contribution at that stage. I think the policy on affordable housing is the council's policy that we are seeking up to the 40%, and that is the policy, and that is established through the local plan policies. I think the policy also says, nonetheless, it is subject to viability. And so it is the case that the developers have the right to demonstrate what they believe a scheme can viably put forward. We have an opportunity to challenge their viability in the assessment of the application. And I think what I said earlier on, and I haven't looked at the detail of this case because I try not to, but on the balance of what's been said, our assessment of the developer's viability seems to concur with it. And I think that is where we are. But I think our policy on affordable housing is clear. It is 40% subject to viability.
Okay, just before I bring Jimmy in, Guy, can I dissuade you given what Peter and Jimmy have said?
No.
Okay,
no,
let me
because two things really. First of all, I'm not an expert on the housing market. I'm an expert on the planning committee, though. I've been on it for about 4 years, and I can tell you that 3 or 4 years ago, John might back me up, I don't know. 3 or 4 years ago, these things regularly came up with, oh well, we can't afford it, and the scheme is only going to produce 10% affordable housing, and the planning committee got a little bit unhappy about that, and we said no, please don't bring forward plans that don't show 40%, because it's always possible to make 40%. It may be that we don't like them because they're too high, or for other reasons, or it may be that they've got their sums wrong. But we should be trying to stick to the 40% policy, because that's what our policy is. And the reason I was dismayed is that for the last couple of years, I have not seen one that has come forward with less than 40%. And all of a sudden we've got one which is 24. So that's what. Now, so the next thing is that the developer believes this is viable at 14%, 14.9%, whatever percentage it is. So they'll go and, one hopes they'll go and build it. I mean, I know that developers sometimes change their mind, but currently they think it's viable. If in 3 years' time, when they're finished, it comes out to be 17%, bully for them, but also bully for us, because we've allowed them to build something that doesn't conform with our policy. We'd like to have something back from that, please. So that's why I don't want to withdraw that. It's a commercial matter, not legal.
Sure, but I'm just mindful of what was said by Peter Matthews in regards to that. The moment it goes over the 14.9, the review mechanism kicks in. So either we have a faith in the review mechanism or don't.
Yes, but
that's my worry. That
No. I agree with Peter that we should trigger the review mechanism if it goes above 14.9%. That's so.
Okay.
So I think I think that's what Peter says as well.
Okay, Jimmy, you've heard Peter. You've heard Councillor Lambert. What's the way forward? Because obviously he wants to put a condition on, and I'm trying to dissuade him, because we have a review mechanism which is as good as a condition if we believe in the mechanism. But I'll put it to you in a legal way as to what is the legal way forward.
I apologize for getting confused here. I think what Peter Matthews was suggesting, that there could be a trigger at the 14.9%, and that can be incorporated into the section 106 as an obligation. And am I not sorry? So I'm confused by the mention of the word condition. I think.
Okay. Well, that's what Guy is trying to do. Let me bring Peter in. Peter, maybe you could shed some light, having heard the debate from Councillor Lambert and what Jimmy has said. Thank you, Peter.
So in an oblique way, I think Councillor Lambert and I are saying the same thing. Yeah. So the triggering of the review mechanism once the profitability level is reached is a policy requirement. It is a requirement that if the assessed profitability level put forward in this application, 14.9%, is achieved, it is a requirement that the review mechanism kicks in. So from that point of view, it is a condition anyway.
Right.
And I think that's the key question here, that the application is being put forward and recommended by officers on the understanding that should its profitability exceed 14.9, the review mechanism will kick in.
Okay, right. So, Guy, let me dissuade you from that, right? So, bearing in mind that already exists under the Section 106 agreement, according to what Peter has said. So, I have full faith in the review mechanism. So, let's stick with that, right? Okay. Was there anything further to add, Guy? Hello.
Just as long as that I'm reassured that 14.9% will be the trigger, then I'm happy.
Okay, well, Peter's nodding his head, right? And you have got a recording of this. Okay, right. Let me move on to Councillor John Todd. John, debate.
Yeah.
Comment.
Guy used my name in respect of previous applications, and I readily agree with you, Guy, to the extent that I can distinctly remember that church conversion down by the river, where we allowed a lower figure on quite exceptional build basis. I don't know if you remember that one. I don't have any time for this on the basis that 24% to me, using crude language, is absurd, and everything is on a boundary. Everything is pushing. So okay. That's my point, but I endorse what you said, and I agree with you too. Thank you.
Okay. Right. I mean, just a few comments, right? Obviously, Peter has said his piece, and obviously we'd like to see for the council to meet its commitments in terms of social housing, and as they say at Tesco's, every little helps. I know people are not happy with the 24%, but then this is something that has been suggested in terms of the viability report. A lot of things. I mean, trees is one issue, and we have a condition now attached for the trees. I for one, look at this development and I compare it with say Heston Central, where we had the Heston Leisure Complex in 2006. It was a low density, we never got it. In 2010, we started it and we got double the density. So the pressures I'm suggesting are going to be on any little site, whether it be this one or anywhere else in the borough. And there is a disappearing of the large sites which really deliver the 40%. And I'm all for more than the 40%, which, you know, we've been looking in terms of political frontage. So I for one, you know, the scheme has its positives and it has the negative, but in the overall scheme of things, I think that this is a scheme that whatever happens, whatever is on that site. Right, Councillor Todd, can I suggest you mute your mic, right? Because I will not accept the behavior and the bad language that's constantly been flowing from yourself. It will take as long as it will take. I'm not hearing you because you got it on mute. Well, we'll let Councillor Todd have his little rant.
We didn't hear anything, Chair, at all.
Well, I've heard him use the F word, so it's on the recording.
You did not hear me say the F word.
I did hear you, and I'm actually, you know, rather dismayed that this is a public meeting, and we're bringing the council into disrepute. Right, let me move on. With that in mind, all the comments have been said. We're going to move on to the vote. So I'm going to follow this in the order. Councillor Richard Foote. How do you vote? Oh, sorry. In terms of, can I get somebody to move a recommendation?
Well, I was going to move the recommendation, Chair. So.
Okay. Can I have a seconder?
As I'm live, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Can I have a seconder? A seconder to the recommendation?
Yeah, I'll do that, Chair.
Councillor Preetham Garwal. Thank you. Right, we move to the vote. I have a proposer and a seconder, and so now that's live. So let me move on to the vote. So Councillor Richard Foote, are you in favour of the proposal?
Yes, Chair, I'm in favour of the proposal. I have been present throughout the debates, and as I say, I vote in favour of the proposal. I presume with the addition of the element about trees.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Samia Chaudhry. Samia.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Samia Chaudhry. Yes, I have been present all the way through for the debate, and I vote for the recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Samia. Councillor Preetham Garwal.
Yes, Chair. I've been here all the time, listen to the debate, and I vote in favour of the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Preetham Garwal. Thank you. Councillor Guy Lambert.
Thank you, Chair. I've been here all the time, and I abstain from voting.
Okay. Councillor John Todd.
Chair, I've been here all the time and heard everything's been said. I abstain too.
Abstain. Okay. Councillor Amrit Mann. I've been here present for the debate. I've heard all the evidence, and I vote in favour of the officer's recommendations for approval. So, members, that's carried 4. There are no againsts. There are 2 abstentions. So that's carried. Okay. Thank you very much. Now, we've had about 3.5 hours of this going on. We're all a bit ratty, hot and flustered. So we're going to take a 10-minute comfort break. It is 7:45. Could you please return by 7:55? Thank you very much, members.
And thank you all for making our lives a misery. We'll see you in court. Bye-bye.
Hello, Sadiq.
Yes, Chair.
Yeah. So how many members have we got on at the moment?
I can see yourself, Councillor Chowdhury, and Councillor Foote so far.
So far, okay. Give it a few more moments. Okay, Councillor Todd's back on. Councillor Lambert, he's in a call. Okay. All right. So once we get everybody on board.
I'm here actually.
Okay, Guy, yeah, you're on. Okay.
I'm back here.
Okay, Pritham, yeah, got you there. Samia, are you on?
She's here.
Yes, I'm on.
Okay, Samia, that's good. Councillor Richard Foote.
Oh yes, I'm here.
Okay, all right. Okay, so we can kick off, yeah. So we can reconvene and conclude the council meeting, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, ready when you are.
Right. Okay. Yeah, far away.
Go for it.
Okay, welcome back. So let's continue on with the main agenda. We're now on item 3, which is the National Air Traffic Services in Fags Road, Feltham, and Sam Smith is going to be presenting that report. There are no speakers and objectors, so we go straight into it. Sam, over to you and your presentation.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just bear with me. Is that on the screen now? Can you see?
Yep,
no?
We can see it.
Yep. Okay. Oh. My apologies, I don't quite know what happened there. 2 seconds, sorry. Thank you. The application before you now is agenda item 3, which concerns the Nuts radio station site off Fags Road. It's situated between Bedfont Hatton and North Feltham. I draw your attention to the contents of the main report and the addendum report, which was published yesterday. The site is located to the west of Fags Road, just to the south of Hounslow Urban Farm and Hatton Cemetery. The site contains existing masts and equipment which provide air traffic control facilities for Heathrow Airport and telecommunication services to the local area. The site is accessed by a track which is roughly 500 metres long, and you can see that just going off the screen there, and that goes on to Fags Road. The site is designated Metropolitan Greenbelt and it's allocated for industrial development in the emerging draft West of Borough plan. This is just showing the general arrangement here of the existing site. You've got 3 existing masts, which you can see just dotted around the site, and then a central building there, which contains apparatus and other equipment associated with it. And that's the existing elevation form, just showing that they're the 3 different masts. So you've got 2 taller masts and then 1 shorter mast there in the southwest corner. Now, the application proposes the removal of 3 existing masts and the replacement with 1 new mast. And you can just see that in the elevation form there. We wrote to over 6,000 properties in the local area, and we also posted press and site notices, and we received 9 objections and 5 letters of support. The contents of them are set out in my report for your attention. Considering the assessment, this site is within Metropolitan Greenbelt and close to Heathrow Airport, and planning policy is quite clear that development would be by definition inappropriate within the Greenbelt. And we expect as a borough telecommunications equipment and that associated with Heathrow Airport must not have any adverse impact on the Greenbelt. We also require that exceptional circumstances must be demonstrated to justify any development within the Greenbelt, which is not appropriate. The applicant is the air traffic control services provider for Heathrow Airport, and the existing structures have been present on site for many years. There are a number of systems based on the site, and the applicant has advised that the taller mast that is proposed here would allow maximum benefits from these systems to be achieved in the current location and also improve the resilience of the air traffic control equipment which serves Heathrow Airport, and that's a significant public benefit which must be given weight. The mast would also allow the consolidation of the 3 existing masts on the site into one, and albeit it is a taller mast, the lattice steel construction would permit more views through the structure and maintain the openness in the Greenbelt. And this would overall eventually reduce the built footprint within the Greenbelt, following a transition period where the 2 existing masts that you can see on the screen would be retained for a period while the new mast was constructed, and then following that they would be decommissioned, and a condition requires a phasing plan to be submitted which would address that and ensure that the benefits to the Greenbelt would be realised through that. It's therefore considered which the very special circumstances have been demonstrated which would warrant the development being located within the green belt and therefore would be acceptable in principle. And considering the design as we discussed, it would be a steel lattice tower with equipment arrays at various heights up the tower. The overall design is functional, but this serves not to draw attention to the overall structure and responds to the existing design. There would need to be a red aircraft navigation light installed at the top of the tower. However, it is not proposed that the tower itself would be illuminated beyond this. Whilst the main tower would be more visible in the local area, it's not considered that this would unacceptably harm the character and appearance of the local or wider area. And I'm just going to run through some key views here from some key open spaces in the local area. In respect of neighbouring residences, Neighbours on Fags Road and also off to the south on Staines Road and the streets that come off that to the north of there. The distance of the tower between those neighbours is such that it wouldn't overshadow or appear overbearing from these. So the development would also be acceptable in all other regards, subject to the safeguarding conditions which are set out at the end of the report. The application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to those conditions, and I welcome any questions that you may have. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Sam. Now, we're going to go through the running order for questions to Sam in regards to this particular application. So, Councillor Richard Foote.
No, I have no questions, Chair.
Right, okay, thank you. Councillor Samia Chaudhry.
Thank you, Chair. I have no question.
Okay, thank you, Samia. Councillor Preetham Garwal.
No question, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Guy Lambert.
No questions, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Guy. Councillor John Todd.
Chair, no questions. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. There are no questions from myself. Thank you very much, Sam. Now we move in for debate or comments on this particular application. So again, I'll go through Councillor Richard Foote for any comments, any debate.
No, I think my days of frequent flying are over, so I don't have any.
You might be joined by quite a few.
Debate on it or worries about it. Thanks, Chair.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Richard Foote. Okay, Councillor Samia Chaudhry.
No question or comment. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Preetham Garwal.
No, I'm okay, Chair. No question. No, nothing to debate.
Okay. Councillor Guy Lambert.
No, nothing to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor John Todd, any comments, any debate?
Chair, no comments, no debate. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Myself, no comments, no debate. Thank you very much. So that's that. Now, somebody to move the proposal. Councillor John Todd, so your hand up first.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm very happy to recommend the proposal that it be approved.
Okay, seconder, Samia Chaudhry. Thank you, Guy, but I saw Samia Chaudhry. Samia? Okay, thank you. So we have a proposal that's been proposed by Councillor John Todd and seconded by Samia Chaudhry. So we move straight into the vote. Again, Councillor Richard Foote, your vote, sir.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Councillor Richard Foote. I have been here for the whole of this debate, all few minutes of it, and I am voting in favour of the planning permission be approved subject to the conditions set out in section 11. That's
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Richard Foote. Okay, moving on to Councillor Samia Chaudhry. Samia.
Thank you, Chair. I have been present for the debate and I'm for the proposal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Preetham Garwal.
Yes, Chair, I've been here all the time and voting in favour of the motion. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Guy Lambert.
Yes, Chair, thanks. I've been here through this interminable debate and I'm in favour of the motion.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor John Todd.
Chair, thank you. I've been present and listened carefully to the whole debate and I agree with the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. and Councillor Amrit Mann, myself. I've been present for the whole debate, and I am for the proposal, the Officer's recommendation for approval. So, colleagues, that is carried unanimously. Yeah, there are, I mean, well, it's been carried. So, moving on to the rest of the agenda. Addendum report, I think we've had from the officers as part of the items. Item 6, any other business? I've not been informed of any. The date of the next meeting is the 3rd of September 2020. So that I think
cancelled here, sorry.
Sorry?
I think that meeting's been cancelled, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say the same, Chair. I think there's something came out this afternoon saying that meeting.
Okay, yeah, so
back to business.
So I think that I'm the person that cancelled it.
I'm glad to see you're on the ball.
Okay, see, look, this is what happens after about 4 hours of this. Your mind goes mushy. Okay, look, can I thank all members, right, and the planning officers, and also thank the ICT officer and Sadiq, who were producing this meeting, and the Democratic Services and legal officers who supported it and organised it. Thank you to all members of the public who are persevering to watch this for about 4 hours. It's one of those long meetings. It's hot and we can get bothered, so we must maintain decorum. Right, but anyway, look, thank you, colleagues, for all your endeavours, and with that, I close this meeting. So,
thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Peter, hang on.